Hey everyone, welcome back to CryptoCash. Thank you so much for joining me here. Hope you're having an amazing day. We're going to take a look at a scalping strategy that I have. We're going to take a two-part series here, of course, help you understand a little more, best practice on how to first initially, identify an actual trend essentially, and then of course how to scalp effectively based on specific indicators that I find to be very beneficial for me. Again, everyone has different risk tolerances, different opinions. It's perfectly fine if you differ and have your own strategy. I want you to develop your own strategy, but these are the things that work very well and effectively for me. Now, just to kind of preface here, this part one is going to be the macro understanding of how to identify, and then we're going to go ahead and go into a part two, of course, for more of a micro understanding. Smaller time frames, essentially. But if you've seen any of my videos, you probably understand where I'm going with this here, of course, because big picture, you need to understand where you're coming from, right? What is the overall sentiment in the market generally in the last X amount of days, not hours or minutes, okay? Because again, to be an effective trader at a small time frame, you really truly need to understand the overall trend in the market. The trend is your friend, right? So, it may not identify or work specifically for you in every instance, but I can tell you this will help increase your odds dramatically because of the simple fact that you establish a specific trend, you understand what the trend is, and you use that more effectively. Okay, so enough preface aside here, let's go ahead and talk about this here. Now, first of all, when it comes to Bitcoin, or just in general any coin, we want to look at the big picture and understand that. So the big picture to me, of course, is the 1 day, but I would even stretch out even further and go to the 1 week, and just to ensure you're on the right side of the tracks. What I mean by the right side of the tracks is that we want to ensure that you're in kind of an ascending type of pattern, whereas the price action is increasing progressively and not decreasing. Because if it's decreasing, your odds of success is going to go lower if you're trying to only do long positions. You may want to consider or shift your mentality to a short position, right? Sell high, buy low, that whole concept. So in this regard, we're just going to go ahead and go with the foundation of the fact that we're going to buy low and sell high, right? And in turn, we want to be in an uptrend type of market. Now, over the last year, you can see that Bitcoin's lowest low from last year is effectively right around 30,000 as a rough estimate. This low here recently, again, more of a weekly close, is closer to 36, 35. So that being said, we're in an uptrend essentially. You can kind of see that the price is going up overall, making higher highs and higher lows. That's extremely important to identify. It may seem very rudimentary or perhaps something that you're not really wanting to do or understand, but I can tell you the overall sentiment really helps you understand that you're on the right side of tracks or not. And that's truly what it is about being a good trader. It isn't just jumping into a trade arbitrarily because you got a good feeling about it. That means nothing. What matters the most is understanding the overall trend, because the people that are moving the market are the ones that have the money, and you got to understand what they're thinking. They're going to be investing when others are investing, and they're going to be selling when others are selling. It's kind of just the way that it works. That's why we see such dramatic increases and decreases. So identifying that in a big picture is really helpful. All right, so first step I would say is to maybe take a look at the 1 week, see if there's any other instances. And I already know this, of course, I've touched on it in other videos, but we do have a hidden bullish divergence here, of course, just basically implying that the RSI is lower now than it was before, so it's more oversold than it should be, and in turn we should expect more of an increase moving forward. That being said, that's a very, very positive sentiment going on overall in the market right now, and that's something that you want to probably understand and acknowledge. That being said, the weekly looks very good. We even have a potential MACD convergence forming right now on the weekly. Extremely good news. All right, so we checked it off the list. The weekly looks great. Look at the 1 day here. Okay, a little bit closer, of course. We can kind of see things changing, of course, but there's still an overall trend here, right? So to remove the larger time trend, we can also identify here as well that we have a shorter term trend. This over here, 35,000. 37,000, now 38. It's continuing to progress upwards. All right. Now I've already understand. You probably watched some of my Bitcoin videos. If you haven't, maybe check those out. But there is generally a resistance level right around 45, 46,000. Okay. Closer, I would say 46,000. A break above 46 would be extremely important for Bitcoin. That'd make me feel excellent based on the overall sense of where we're at in the market. For right now, we're trending closer to that. But as you can see, higher lows essentially. We're not making higher highs yet, but the higher lows are continuing. That's an overall positive trend telling us the price is moving upwards. Extremely important. We look down here at the RSI, we're up over 50. This is extremely important as well, and the main reason why is because 50 on the RSI is commonly a resistance or support level. We get this 1 day candlestick to close above 50 on the RSI, which we have already yesterday, then that gives us the indication that we're above a key level resistance. that key level resistance is close to 40,000. I've already identified that, of course, previously, but generally speaking, being up over 50 on the RSI on the 1 day is extremely helpful. You don't necessarily have to wait for that in all circumstances, but it's also a positive contributing factor, because just say you were underneath the RSI, for example, at like, just say you're like right at 49, like previously right here, that would not have been a great time to consider investing for a long position, because the market's overall trending downwards in that 2 or 3 day time frame. Right, it's getting rejected by the RSI, and in turn may not be a great entry point for a long position. Okay. Now again, you'll still find success. You can still find long positions for scalping strategies in those smaller time frames. But again, the larger time frame is telling us overall that in this last week, if we were to try to trade a week ago, we would have been trading against the grain instead of with it. Okay. So again, that's just something to acknowledge. Also taking a look here, of course, at the MACD convergence in the 1 day. 2 days ago, we saw that strong convergence, essentially telling us that the bulls are more so in control now than they were before, and in turn, maybe advantageous to consider a long position, right? Okay, again, just the things that you want to try to look at. And you don't have to spend a tremendous amount of time doing this. Honestly, it should take you no more than maybe 2 or 3 minutes to look at the weekly, the daily, 4 hour, and then work your way down, right? But that's what we're going to focus on right now, again, as part 1 here. Just understand weekly, daily, and the 4 hour. Those are my favorite time frames for identifying macro movements and understanding generally the overall trend. We can specify right now that this trend is moving upwards, and it's definitely continuing to progress in a positive way if you're taking long positions, right? So again, go with the grain instead of against the grain, with the current instead of against, whatever you term or analogy you want to include, apply it here, okay? Looking at the 4 hour time frame here is where things get a little more interesting, whereas I like to look at moving averages, and I did kind of skip this on the 1 day. Technically, I like to look at the simple moving averages on the 1 day. And just to note really quick to jump back to that, we want to be up over 50 on the RSI, as well as up over 50 on the SMA. The simple moving average here is telling us we're above 50. We closed above yesterday, and again today almost. We're almost there. So we're essentially in a pretty good position to be able to expect that to be considered a support level, and the price should continue to progress upwards. Also a contributing factor you want to pay attention to. Look at this as well, the same scenario on the 4 hour time frame, and you can realize that we're up over both moving averages here too. And this is extremely ideal, of course. Now you can still trade into a simple moving average with scalping. There's nothing wrong with that. But again, you got to recognize that they can work as support and resistance levels, and at this point, the 200 is working as a nice support. And that being said, if the price were to come back down and possibly bounce off of just say 40,200, which is a key level support at this time, then we could say that, hey, the 200-day SMA is effectively going to work as a support level. No need to try to trade into that, okay? Wait for it to bounce and effectively use that as a support, okay? Again, just some things I try to look for. The last thing, of course, would be another confirmation of the RSI, ensuring it's not too overextended, which it isn't. It didn't pass 70, which is nice, but we're still up over 50, essentially confirming that we are on the right side of the tracks, and we had a MACD convergence here for the most part, basically a bounce that is essentially working the same, and that is also equally as important. Okay. So again, all these things kind of aside gives me the indication that, hey, we're in a bullish type of uptrend. It may not be significantly bullish, but the price action is moving higher, and we're seeing this nice continuation. Those are all things I like to look for. The last thing you'd want to try to identify, of course, is if there's any potential for exhaustion just before you jump into the smaller time frames, just to kind of understand that. And TD sequential, if you've seen my videos or watched, if you say you're currently a community member, I cover all this in great detail within my trading academy. Again, cryptocash.tech, link in the description below if you want to consider becoming a member there so you know what I'm talking about. But here in general, TD sequential tells us if we're exhausted or not. We did hit this state of exhaustion recently at a 9. Price consolidated sideways, and then it ramped up again here recently. Okay, so simply put, that doesn't tell us a tremendous amount right now, but it does tell us we are only 2 hours in to a potential 9-hour push to the upside. So there's a likelihood of just say 9 4-hour candlesticks, 36 hours worth of continuation to the upside. There is potential for that. Okay. So again, that's just kind of telling us, again, also that we are in good shape, we're not overextended, we have room or gas left in the tank. All right, so that's what I want to kind of specify here. This is more so the macro type of understanding of what to look for prior to scalping, just because, again, you've got to understand the common trend. Generally speaking, you should always be looking at these things. If you jump right in and you go to the 1 minute chart and it's all you trade, you're doing it wrong. You have to look at the larger time frames to understand the overall movement, because really, if you don't know what side of the tracks you're on, you're going to just be fighting an uphill battle or kind of shooting in the dark. And that's not what good traders do. Good traders understand the market they're in, trade with the trend because the trend is your friend. Okay. So that is kind of the first half of what I want to show you. The next part or series in this video here, essentially, or video in this series, will be basically just kind of going into the scalping strategy itself and understanding, what does that look like. We're going to look at the 1 hour, the 15-minute, possibly even the 1-minute chart to kind of identify certain things that I look for to help you kind of essentially find profit in these smaller time frames.